Hey, today we're going to build a trestle style farmhouse table for a customer out of construction material, 2x material that you can get at any Home Depot or Lowe's or any sort of home center. So please like, comment, and subscribe below and watch the video to the end to see how the table turns out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
So the first thing I did was cut 2 4x4 feet to the size that I need for my table, and I also cut a cross piece that'll connect those 2 feet. That's how I started out my trestle base. Now I used dowel joinery. You could use screws, mortise and tenon if you want to. You can use anything. I have a dowel jig and it was fast and easy, and it makes an extremely strong joint. So that's the way I attach them. I've talked to people that are significantly better at woodworking than me, and a dowel, in my understanding at least, is basically a floating tenon. Maybe it doesn't have as much strength and it's a little different, but that's essentially what it is. Either way, it's extremely strong, but there are several different ways that you could do this. So when you do dowels, it's just important that you try to get them lined up as close as possible so you don't have to make any corrections on the back end. And another thing is to make sure that the depth of the holes that you're drilling are going to be deep enough to take the dowel. So I did my dowels about 3 inches long, which means that the hole drilled into each side is going to be 1.5 inches. So there's an 1.5 inch depth of hole in the cross piece and 1.5 inch depth of hole in the 4x4 feet. Now I do put glue in the hole and on the dowel itself. That way if there's some squeeze out, there's still going to be some in there. If it squeezes the glue off of the dowel, because it is a tight fit, then there'll still be some in the hole as well. I used oak dowels. I just buy a piece of oak dowel from whatever store I go to, Lowe's or Home Depot usually, and just cut them up to the correct size, and it makes a nice strong tight joint. Even though it fits in there tightly, I still like to clamp it after, so I usually have to tether 2 bar clamps together or just tether 2 pipe clamps together. Now here I am cutting the feet. I just cut 4, this is actually for the feet and the top piece of the trestle table base, and I cut 4 equal pieces. Right there I'm just cutting off a defect. You can't get out all the knots in this type of wood typically, but some of them I can, and I will when I can. I plane those so they're nice and flat for the top and bottom. And then I put a chamfer on the side of the feet that is going to be facing up and down, just to give it a nice clean look. You can do that with a router, you can do it on a table saw, however you want to. Just want to check that that's square, the portion that I put together for the cross piece with the 2 4x4 feet, and now you can see what I'm talking about. That's the piece that's attached. Mine is off center intentionally. You can do it exactly center if you want to. Now attaching the top and bottom, I just use screws, because the part that's going to be on the top is going to be covered by the table and the bottom is going to be touching the floor, so they both won't be seen. I did use glue, even though it's end grain. and 3 screws. I think I used 3.5 or 4-inch screws. Now I brought the table into my basement, to my assembly area, and I'm putting on the miters. I pre-drilled on these as well, so that way once I put the glue in I can screw them down and just keep going. You can see the pre-drilled hole there. And you're going to put 4 of these on each trestle base. Now miters is certainly my weakest point. I always tend to mess the miters up and have to go back and put some wood filler in there after. Now for the holes that are going to be in the miters where I screwed in, I made them deep enough so I could put plugs in them because I don't want the screw holes to show. I just put the dowel in there and flush cut it off. Now onto the tabletop. That's just my little edge jointing jig that I built. There's tons of designs for those on YouTube. I just incorporated them and made my own. I run the piece of plywood against the fence because that's a nice straight edge, and that translates to a nice straight edge on my tabletop board. I did that on all the boards, and then the straight edge portion I just put against the fence after taking it out of my edge jointing jig to make the other side match. And there you go, edge jointing without a jointer. Now, I like to glue my tabletops up in sections. My clamps are long enough where I could do all 6 pieces for this tabletop in one shot, but to give yourself a more level table, I ended up using 3-piece sections. I clamped and glued those together, and then I attached the 2 3-panel sections together after they were dried overnight. You can see the one panel on the back round, and then I'm making another one right here. Takes lots of clamps. Now I use a paint scraper to get out the glue. I've heard of people, you can wipe it off with a wet rag, but I like to let it dry first so I'm not rubbing the glue into the wood, and that way I figure it out once I'm actually trying to do a finish. You can see that there's spots that aren't taking stain, so I just let it dry a little bit, probably for a few hours, to where it's kind of like a skin or a little filmy, and then I'll go ahead and scrape it off. I've used card scrapers and paint scrapers. Now you can see after getting the tabletop glued up and dried, I'm cutting off to make the edges straight and also cut the table to length. I had to keep stopping with a circular saw because it binds up, and then I have to put a piece like a shim behind it. I had to do that like 3 times just to get across a 36-inch width of the table. Now I didn't show myself staining the table, but there it is, all stained. I'm putting on polyurethane. I sanded with 800 grit sandpaper between coats, and then I'm going to bring the table out for the customer to pick up, take a few pictures in the driveway, and watch the table drive away.